If the Chargers want to reach their full potential in 2023, they're going to need some players to prove it for them this season, and it starts with Joey Bosa, who has to prove he's still a cornerstone part of this defense.
You are Locked On Chargers, your daily podcast on the Los Angeles Chargers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, and welcome into the Locked On Chargers podcast. I'm your host, Daniel Wade, joined as always by my co-host, David Drogemeyer. We've been covering the Chargers together now for 7 seasons, but this is our 5th season as a host of the Locked On Chargers podcast, bringing you your team every day. Thank you guys, as always, for making us your first listen today. And to make sure you never miss the show, go subscribe or follow for free to the Locked On Chargers YouTube channel, and also listen to the show wherever you get your podcast from. David, what do we got today?
Today, Daniel, we're going to get into some players that have to, quite frankly, prove it. And they need to show that they're going to be ready to help the Chargers win. And that starts with Joey Bosa up front and Sebastian Joseph-Day. And then in the middle, going to Kenneth Murray Jr. And then stopping by some of the offensive players like Trey Pipkins, Donald Parham Jr., and Tre McKitty.
Yeah, I think, and it's cool because they all need something different to prove to the Chargers, right?
Yeah.
Not every case is different. For Joey Bosa, the most important thing is going to be staying on the field, right? But there's some other guys, especially for future aspirations, you kind of need to know what you have of them, and they have to prove they can be a key part of your team going forward. But this episode is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook, the official sportsbook of the NFL. Make every moment more. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon today to get started. And David, it felt a little bit harsh to put Joey Bosa on a list of prove it to us kind of a thing, right? Because he's been out there, and when he has been out there, he's been great. But last season, you saw the hit on the Chargers defense when he couldn't be out there, and more importantly, when he just wasn't right out there, right?
Yeah.
When he was out there, but wasn't fully himself. So I think he is someone for the Chargers to reach their potential, right? Because that's an important part of this. Like, they need these things to go right for them in 2023. And one of those things is Joey Bosa proving that he can be out there and still be, you know, a game-changing type of player.
Yeah, and I think Joey Bosa needs it for a myriad of different reasons. I think he needs it because of some of the off-the-field issues that happened towards the end of last year. I think, obviously, the recency bias of that might kind of distract you from how great Joey Bosa really is when he is on the football field. And I think that's one of the things that Joey Bosa needs to prove to himself and to prove to everyone else, that once he is on that field, he can stay healthy and he can dominate.
One, it starts with health, right? I mean, last year, obviously, he was limited to 5 games, and there's been 4 different seasons in his 7 years that he's missed at least 4 games. The hard thing is leading up to this last season in 2022, he had been relatively healthy, right? Between 2019 and 2021, he only missed 5 games, right? Missed 4 games one season and missed 1 game in 2021. So, like, he had been a lot healthier. He's had 2 seasons where he's missed most of the season. That's the hard thing, right? 2017, 2019, you felt like you pretty much lost him for the whole year, and that was obviously devastating to your defense. But if you're looking for the positives, I mean, when he's out there, he's still healthy, but he still has to go out there. If you're going to be looking towards the future, David, and you're looking towards the salary cap in 2024 when the Chargers are $60 million over it as we speak, projected, right? And until we know what the actual numbers are, he has to prove he can be that player for this team. He can be a game-changing player. He can kind of live up to what that contract is and kind of what you were going to right there, which is just remind the NFL that he is one of the elite players at his position when he's out there.
Yeah, and the Chargers paid him to be one of the elite players in the NFL. They gave him a 5-year, $135 million contract. And I think, you know, when he has been healthy, the numbers have been pretty good. You know, I don't think that we have seen the best of Joey Bosa. And I think that's another thing that goes into this is part of the vision that the Chargers had last year was pairing Joey Bosa with Khalil Mack. And unfortunately, that vision never really got to come to fruition. So now you're hoping that Joey Bosa is completely 100% healthy and his quads are not bothering him. And at least up to this point, it seems like that's the case. He has stated he's healthier than he's been in a very, very long time. He can train how he wants to train, how he needs to train to go out there and be the dominant player. But But yeah, I mean, the Chargers have paid him to be one of the best pass rushers in the league, and I don't think we have seen Joey Bosa at his full potential yet. I don't think those numbers have arrived, and I think hopefully this year is when that Joey Bosa, starts to show himself.
I mean, yeah, he's 7 seasons in, right? Like, I think at a certain point you kind of are where you are. I don't know if you can just necessarily expect to just jump to a 15-sack season when the highest he's ever done is 12.5, right? Like, I think he has the potential for it. I mean, last year he was, number 1 in the NFL as far as pass rush win rate. When he was rushing, he was doing great and beating the guy in front of him, which is one of the most important parts of that position, obviously. But at the same time, it's not like he has to prove it. He doesn't have to prove that he's a good player. He's proven it. When he's out there, he's already good, right? Like, he doesn't even have to prove that he can play like a fully healthy season. Like, he's done that a couple times in his career as well, right? But for the Chargers, can he prove that he is the right guy to be the future at that position for this team and earn the salary that he's going to command the next 3 seasons, right? After this year, it's $36 million in 2024. And then after that, it's going to be $32 million in 2025. So, like, he has to prove, if the Chargers want to reach their full potential, right, that he can be that guy that they paid and that he can elevate the rest of the defense around him. Like, you don't get paid that much to be good. You get paid that much to be a game-changing type of player. The same expectations are put on Derwin James. To a lesser extent, they should be put on Khalil Mack as well. But for Joey Bosa, a homegrown guy who they gave the largest defensive contract to of all time, he has to prove for this team that he can be out there and not only just be out there, but be elite when he is out there.
That's right.
Another guy that kind of fits the bill of maybe having to prove it and live up to a lofty contract, David, is Sebastian Joseph-Day. 3 years, $24 million that he got in 2022. Not that that's a giant, it's not a Joey Bosa size contract, but that was one of the main additions they made to try to get Brandon Staley, a guy that fit in his defense, to come in, really help in the run game, and to just be, a starting kind of top-tier defensive tackle at that position. I don't know if you can say he was that in 2022.
Yeah, I mean, and they definitely paid him to be. I mean, that was pretty much the top of the defensive line market, right around $10 million per season. And so he had 37 tackles last year. He had a 9.5% missed tackle percentage, which was the second highest of his career. And also did not really bring much as a pass rusher at all. He had 18 total pressures and 2 sacks. And I mean, that just wasn't really enough for me. I think when you consider that kind of money, I think you're needing more. You're just needing, you need to show me that there's one part of your game that is dominant, that you can put your hat on and say, this is what I bring to the table better than anybody else. And I don't know if we got that from Sebastian Joseph-Day last year.
I think with Joey Bosa, you need him to be a game-changing type of player. You need him to be a stalwart or a cornerstone type of player, right? You don't necessarily need Sebastian Joseph-Day to be that. What you need him to be is an impact player, right?
Yeah.
Like, you have to feel him. And let's say how it is. I mean, there's a lot of dirty work just at that position in general.
Definitely.
It's going to be almost impossible to quantify, and it's almost going to be impossible to fully appreciate what he's doing, playing through injury, right? I'm sure being banged up last year. I'm sure
doubt.
he had something. And just, taking on double teams and doing all those things. I mean, it was one of the lowest run defense grades from PFF that he's ever had. I think the lowest, which, you have to take with a grain of salt.
49.3, yeah.
But, I mean, I think you just want him, so in 2021, he had 15 pressures, right? And it was one every 14.9 snaps. And that was his last year with Los Angeles. Not even the Staley year, right?
Yeah.
Last year, it was 18 pressures, and it was one every 20.7 snaps. That's almost 6 snaps more in between pressures, right? That's 1 or 2 a game that you're talking about there. He took a step back there last season, and, he was 112th out of 143 in pass rush win rate. He wasn't brought in here to be an elite pass rusher, right? But if you're going to get that many pass rush snaps, I think you're hoping that it's going to be a little bit more.
Yeah, you need to get a little more from it, right? Yeah.
Yeah, and if you're looking at the defensive stops, right, mostly looking at the running game, in 2022, he had 32 and 702 snaps, right? 32, that's 2 a game. Doesn't sound terrible, but in 2020, he was a different kind of player. He had 33 and 412 snaps. So he had one more and, 300 less snaps than he had last season. So if he's going to be out there for those snaps, especially because the Chargers really only added one rookie to that group, right, with Scott Matlock, and then you had Nick Williams, who is just kind of a whatever type of a player so far in his career. Someone at least you can't totally rely on, at least.
Right. No, of course not.
I don't know. I just feel like Sebastian Joseph-Day, he got that contract, and he brings a lot of things off the field. The energy that he brings, the camaraderie. There's a lot of things he does bring to the table, but I think on the field you want to see a little bit more if this team and if this defense is going to get right, if this team's going to reach its full potential. But speaking of the trenches, Trey Pipkins is an interesting one because I think he showed last year he can be good, but he was also hurt. Can he be better if he's not hurt? Can he be the right tackle of the future for the Chargers? We're going to talk about that. And we're also going to talk about if Kenneth Murray and Alohi Gilman can prove they're not the weak spots of this defense. Because, David, let's be honest, they're going to get targeted in 2023. People are going to search out those matchups. You're only as strong as your weakest link. Can those guys step up and prove it in 2023? We're going to get into that coming up right after this. First, though, I do need to tell you guys about FanDuel, the only place that I place my bets, the official betting sponsor of the Locked On Chargers podcast. But baseball right now is in full swing, and there's no better place to get in on the action than America's #1 sportsbook, FanDuel. Right now, new customers get a no-sweat first bet up to $1,000. That's $1,000 back in bonus bets if your first bet doesn't win. Just go to FanDuel.com/lockedon to join in today. If you're winning when you're losing, that's always the best way to lose for sure. But you have baseball going around right now, and obviously that is going to be heating up over summer, and I think the best bets are usually just bet against the Padres because they're terribly inconsistent. But you don't have to bet on baseball either if you don't want to. If you're just a football guy, you can still do that. You can go with Justin Herbert's passing yards. They have a prop for right now, over 4,400.5. That's one we'll talk about on a later show for sure. Keenan Allen, over 900.5 passing or receiving yards. That's another one you can get in on FanDuel. But baseball right now, there's a ton of great promotions and things they have going on at all times on a safe and secure app that's easy to use and pays you instantly. So missing out on your chance to get that no-sweat first bet up to $1,000 when you join FanDuel today. Just go to FanDuel.com/lockedon to sign up. FanDuel, official partner of Major League Baseball. All right, well, let's talk about a guy who I think is kind of borderline because I think last year was probably his true prove-it season. Because he had to prove it because it was him or Storm Norton that was going to be getting the snaps otherwise, David. And that is Trey Pipkins, who the Chargers had win that battle last year and supposedly a close battle with Storm Norton, right? But also, he was banged up last year. And the Chargers ended up giving him a contract after the season anyways, and it was huge because if not, they had no answer at right tackle and would have had to spend premium capital either in the draft or go find another expensive guy in free agency to protect Justin Herbert, right? But Trey Pipkins went out and performed admirably. But now he has the contract. So, David, I think we saw a bit of Trey Pipkins last year, and I thought, he, with what he was suffering, right, through the MCL sprain that he played through for the entire season, the toughness, I think, was a huge part of him getting that contract from the Chargers. But now it's time to show that it was the right decision to get that contract.
Yeah, no, it definitely is. And I think that's one of the common themes with the Chargers is if you prove to them that you are going to be tough, that you're going to be resilient, that you're going to be able to fight through injuries and still go out there and give your best for your team, that the Chargers are going to reward you. They did it with Mike Williams. They did it here with Trey Pipkins. And I think, honestly, you look at this deal and just from the surface level, I think you like what you see. 3 years, $21.75 million. And I think that puts him right around the 11th highest paid right tackle in the league. And then you look at his stats, what he provided while he did have that sprained MCL. I think you definitely like what you see. I mean, only 2 sacks given up in 586 pass blocking snaps, 6 penalties, only 28 pressures. You love that. I think, you consider that with the injury, with him really kind of having to prove himself his entire career with the Chargers, from being a 3rd-round pick from a very obscure small school that nobody had ever heard of. And, you weren't very, very good at all. And it took you several years, and it took some off-field commitment from you to go out there, do what you need to do to get right physically, mentally, and then go out on the field and be able to prove your worth. Now you got the contract. Now you have to go out there and prove that the Chargers made the right decision in continuing to invest in you.
And the reason it's so important is because the Chargers didn't, like with Sebastian Joseph-Day, make other additions at that position.
That's right.
They signed Trey Pipkins to that 3-year deal, and
that was it.
With that,
yep.
As far as like what they're going to do at tackle.
That's right.
Which is problematic for its own reason, specifically because it's like, hey, the depth there is questionable. We'll see what happens with Foster Sarah, but we don't know. But I do think to go along with the toughness that he showed, the fact that he was going with Duke Manyweather in the offseason and working on his craft, I do think was a huge part of it as well.
Massive.
And it paid off. I mean, out of all tackles with 200 pass blocking snaps last year, which was 79, he was 22nd in pass blocking efficiency, right? And you're talking about right and left tackles.
Yeah.
So, like, anything 32 and above is going to be above average, right? And he is at 22. That's pretty darn good. And also with what he was going through, right? Yeah. 15th in sacks allowed. I think you did see the injury show up in other places, though. He was 61st in QB hits allowed, 45th in pressures allowed, and the run blocking grade for him wasn't good. And I could see that a little bit. I do think it got stronger towards the end of the season. The healthier he got, I think the better he got. And I think that is one of the ways he's going to improve the most, which is just in the running game, having that full mobility, being able to hit the spots he needs to hit to, and to also be able to, push off that knee and drag people out of the way, which is kind of a big part of
run blocking. Because he's got good strength. He's got good athleticism. Like, he can do it if he's healthy.
He's definitely an athlete for sure. But these next guys are prove-it, candidates, are prove-it candidates for different reasons. And it's Alohi Gilman and Kenneth Murray. And I think more Kenneth Murray, if we're being honest, than Alohi Gilman.
Yeah.
But guys that have to just prove that they won't be the weak links in this Chargers defense, or at least that, they can keep up with the rest of the defense enough to keep everything together and not get exposed in that way. And it's Alohi Gilman and Kenneth Murray, who are in different roles, David, but I think both still fit this bill.
Yeah, definitely they do. I mean, I think with Kenneth Murray, the Chargers already told you that you need to prove it to them when they did not pick up your fifth-year option. So I think that was the biggest statement of them saying, hey, I like you, Kenneth, but I need you to prove to me that you should be a part of our future plans.
He's also been on this list before, right? Maybe a couple of times.
For sure, because unfortunately, as we've seen maybe a little bit, we haven't seen enough. And we're talking about a first-round pick here. Let's not forget about that. Kenneth Murray was a first-round pick, and I think you look at that right now, and I don't know if you got anywhere close to the value that you were expecting when you traded up to secure his services. But yeah, last year, 17 games played, 126 tackles, but pretty high missed tackle rate of 13.1%, which that's very, very high. And that's one of the things that's really been plaguing Kenneth Murray throughout the entirety of his career. So we just haven't been able to see that sideline to sideline type of speed and athleticism that he was touted for. So he's going to have to show that this year. And, being another year in this defense, hopefully he's going to be able to go out there and fly around. And for Alohi Gilman, Daniel, it's very important because behind him is just a couple of very unproven guys. And so Alohi Gilman, and of course with Derwin James, you love Derwin James, but he's had some injury issues that you have to consider. And so if he goes down, Alohi Gilman's going to be the main guy. And although he played well, and I think he did provide some good things for the Chargers last year, I don't know if it was enough consistently for you to say, I fully trust Alohi Gilman out there to not be the guy that gets picked on in the secondary.
And that'll be huge because teams are going to target him. I think you're feeling pretty good about the corner situation with J.C. Jackson probably back in the fold in training camp, right, and potentially going out there and starting week 1 for you. I think you feel good about the edge rushers, right? But there's other positions where you don't feel as good, like linebacker and safety, and it's because of these two guys. And, I mean, you could also throw in, J.T. Woods has a lot to prove this year too. He deserves to be in this conversation as well. But for these guys, we know more than likely they're going to be out there to start at first. And, you're talking about Derwin James' injury, right? Alohi Gilman's going to be on the field whether Derwin James is out there or not.
You're right.
I mean, if Derwin James goes down, it gets a lot hairier because then you need not only Alohi Gilman to prove it to you, but JT Woods to prove it to you, and you have legitimate questions about both of those guys being able to do that.
Yeah.
I think as far as Kenneth Murray goes, though, this is what you're hoping for, right? You're hoping Eric Kendricks can help, right? That's the first thing. That Eric Kendricks can, have him in the right spots, but a certain amount of it's just going to come from him. The instincts and things like that we've questioned from him, Eric Kendricks can only help with that stuff much. And I think the expectations are an important part of the conversation to, have as well, because we're not expecting Kenneth Murray at this point to live up to his first-round pick status. Like, that's not what you're hoping for, right? You're not expecting him to be one of the best linebackers in the league. Like, if you were still hoping that at this point and thinking it's his breakout season, that's a different conversation.
Well, it's really just don't be a liability, right, Daniel?
Exactly.
I mean, that's what it is at this point.
Don't be the weak link that every team wants to exploit, and don't be, what hurts the rest of the defense around you, right? Like, if everyone else is doing the right thing and you're not, it makes the whole defense look bad.
Don't be the nail. Don't be the nail that sticks out, because the nail that sticks out gets hammered. I mean,
I think with Kenneth Murray, it's just hard because it's like it's he's going into year 4 right now, and he's been injured. There's been a lot of excuses being made for him, as well.
Yep.
And it's hard to expect a lot better than what we've seen, but if he can go out there and prove, that he can be an average level player, if he can just be a non-liability, like you said, that would be huge for this Chargers defense. If not, maybe Deion Henley can come in and do something right. But as of right now, it seems like even with the 5th-year option being picked up, they still speak very highly of him. We still think he's thought of highly in the organization. They just weren't going to pay him $10 million next season because that would be ridiculous.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I think for those two guys, they do have to prove it to some extent, but it's just prove that, you can fit in. Prove that you can keep up with the rest of this Chargers defense and not, subtract from the players around you. And I think Alohi Gilman showed he could do that. Now it's just ironing it out, being that for an entire season, which he didn't last year, right? He didn't have the chance to. He took that starting job from Nazir Adderley, and he ran with it. Can he keep it going? That's something that's going to be a huge part of this season. Another thing is the tight end room, right? And there's multiple guys in that tight end room that have something to prove for different reasons with Donald Parham and Tre McKitty. And Isaiah Spiller, somehow with, maybe limited action this year, is going to have to prove he can be the RB1 for this team going forward. So we're going to get into those guys coming up right after this. All right. Well, David, one of the first guys you brought up, two of the first guys, I guess, you brought up when we were talking about players who had something to prove this year. And we're going to talk about contract players as well, because those guys, inherently have something to prove because they're trying to make a lot more money. So we're going to do that on another show with Everydayers Know. We'll be back with you guys this week on Wednesday and Friday. We're going to be doing a Chargers mailbag as well. So if you guys want to get your questions in, you can do that in the YouTube comments or on the Locked On LAC Twitter page. But we will also be getting into much more this week, so make sure you guys are back with us for that. But let's start with Donald Parham here, David, because Donald Parham and Tre McKitty, I think, have different things to prove for different reasons. But both of them could have a role with the Chargers offense. And I think in Donald Parham's case, I mean, really in both their cases, they could have a significant role, right? But with Donald Parham, now it's year 4, right? I think 10 catches his first year, 20 catches his second year. You were hoping for that big year 3 leap potentially. And he got injured, right? So he's a guy, we're kind of like Bosa. It's like, hey, prove you can be on the field. But he has a little bit of both. Prove you can stay on the field and prove that you can be a significant weapon for this team.
Yeah, because it's so tantalizing to just see and imagine and envision what Donald Parham Jr. could do for your offense. I mean, having a guy that's 6'8", that's taller than anybody on the defense is a weapon just by itself. So just him being able to stay on the field and be that red zone guy, to be that third down guy, to be a guy who has deceptive stop and start ability and quickness for a larger human being. Like, he has all of those attributes, and that's why it's so frustrating when we talk about Donald Parham, because he hasn't been able to get there. He hasn't been able to stay on the field. It was the horrible concussion issue, and then it was the hamstring injury that he just never was able to recover from. He was able to come back, and then he re-injures it again, and then his whole season is pretty much lost. So he definitely has, he got a new contract this year. It was, a very small one, not a large commitment, but he still needs to, if he wants to be part of the Chargers' plans going forward, and he wants to get any kind of significant contract, later on in his career, he's going to have to go out there and start putting some numbers up.
Well, it's not even just proving, to the Chargers to get his own money, David. It's just he has to prove something in this offense for the Chargers to do what they need to do this year, because he's tight end 2 right now. So, if the Chargers offense is really going to be this juggernaut unit, right, which it's like they kind of have the potential to be this year.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
He has to be a part of it, and if he is going to be a part of it, he has to be better than what we've seen from him and be able to be out on the field. And it gets really, really hairy behind him. It gets a
Yeah.
lot more questions behind him, including the guy we're going to talk about. But I think the quickest way to get there for Donald Parham is you want to stick around in this league, prove to be a dominant red zone threat.
Oh, yeah.
Right? The touchdown production just hasn't been enough, I'd say, through his first 3 seasons for a guy, right, who's 6'8" with long arms. Like, he is the ultimate weapon in the red zone. And I think for him to make an impact in this offense, to get targets in this offense, to be, have a significant role, that is somewhere where you feel like they're going to give him the opportunities. He has to shine in those opportunities.
Oh, yeah, you score touchdowns, you're going to make money. It's going to win. Everyone's going to win if you're able to do that.
And I think that's the quickest way for him. The quickest way for Tre McKitty to get on the field is to prove that he can actually run block, because this is the thing with Tre McKitty. The reason he has to prove it this year is, first of all, even though he's on a rookie contract, it's hard to imagine he's in the mix in 2024 if he plays the way he did in 2022, where the coaches are publicly lambasting him after the season and calling him out specifically and saying we need to upgrade on that unit, in part because, their third-round pick in Tre McKitty hasn't been what they want him to be. I thought he showed flashes as a rookie, had a big regression in 2022, right? Maybe not a huge regression, but just did not take a step at all and probably was worse in 2022 than he was even as a rookie.
Yeah.
And now that leaves you in a really fickle spot here, because you have Kellen Moore, who likes to use tight ends in the run blocking game, and you have a dude you brought in to do that and to be your run blocking guy. And David, if he is that guy, it's easy to see where he'd get snaps in this offense.
Oh, absolutely, yes. I mean, the snaps are there for sure. Yeah. Kellen Moore is going to want to use a tight end that can help block and to be able to be more multiple with those kind of sets there. But when you have a blocking tight end who has a run block grade of 37.3, that's just not going to cut it. And then, oh, by the way, you have a pass blocking grade of 50.2, but your 7 pass block snaps, you allowed 7 pressures. That means you allowed a pressure on every single one of them.
That's crazy.
So that means that I can't trust you to be my lead run blocker as a tight end. I can't trust you to protect my quarterback. And then, hey, you have 10 receptions on 15 targets, but you have 2 drops. And I can remember both of those drops being horrible, wide open drops where you have absolutely no business. Yeah, and horrible timing too. So it's just like, for Tre McKitty, it's you need to show me you can do anything right on the football field. I need to see some positivity in one facet. And for you, like you said, Dan, it's about getting on there and doing your job as a run blocking tight end. If you can do that, if you can just be more technically sound in that aspect of it, that is going to open up your opportunities to start getting a couple of passes a game. But if you can't be trusted to run block, you can't be trusted to do anything.
And most importantly, right, if he can do all those things, he does those things for himself, but it helps the Chargers offense tremendously, because then they have someone they can count on, someone to create mismatches with, not only in the running game, but also the passing game. Because, like you said, if he gets out there and blocks well, he'll be out there for some passing downs as well. But let's talk about Isaiah Spiller, David, because he's in the unique situation being the only running back under contract after the 2023 season, where to some extent for the Chargers, this year, obviously, if he can be a legitimate number 2 guy to help this Chargers running game, that's huge. He's, I think, the biggest hope outside of schematically with Kellen Moore that you can imagine the running game getting a lot better, right? He has to prove that he can be RB1 going forward, and we don't even know how many snaps he's going to get to do it.
Yeah, this is the really tough one for him. And, you've seen him do a lot of videos or post a lot of videos of him working out and trying to get his body right and try to get healthy and trying to get his mind right. And a lot of that were issues last year. I mean, he had a hard time getting healthy, and then he had a hard time kind of earning the trust of the coaching staff to go out there and to be trusted to pass block and protect Justin Herbert. And
just like Tre McKitty has to show he can run block. I mean, if you can't pass block, you're just not going to be on the field if you're protecting Justin Herbert and you're running back.
Yeah, especially when Justin Herbert had messed up ribs. There's just no way that you could be trusted to go out there and protect your quarterback. But now this is a new year. It's a fresh start for Isaiah Spiller. So now he has to go out there and be productive. It's about showing that physical threat, that physical nature that you had at Texas A&M when you were running through in between the tackles and dragging guys for 3 or 4 yards. Yeah. Like, that's the type of Isaiah Spiller that we need to see, because there is a role for that in this offense, Daniel. They need somebody that can be that in between the tackles type of guy that can be a good complement to Austin Eckler while he is here for this year.
Yeah, and I mean, he has the potential to do that. And I think even if he doesn't show he can be a legit RB1, like I just feel like he has to prove something this season that shows you, okay, well, hey, maybe the running back group in 2024 and going forward isn't in as dire of a spot as it seems like it is right now, where you have Austin Eckler and Joshua Kelly, who also could break out this year, right? Both being unrestricted free agents after this upcoming season. So you hope those guys go off as well. But if this dude goes off, it helps you most long-term for sure. And here's a one positive note. Last year, 18 carries for 41 yards. According to Pro Football Focus, he had 38 yards after contact.
And 4 forced missed tackles, too.
So that means that,
awesome.
But listen to this. He had 41 yards. 38 were after contact. That means he had 3 yards before guys were hitting him last season, right?
That's incredible.
38 yards after contact on 41 total yards. That's crazy. So I think
love it.
You look at the 4 missed tackles, right? A better percentage than Austin Eckler and Josh Kelly. Obviously, an incredibly small sample size.
Sure.
There is some light slipping in, some hope slipping in, but you just have to see it. And it's so important, not only for this year and hoping this Chargers run offense gets a lot better, but also going forward that he can be that guy, especially with the Austin Eckler contract situation already being at a spot where that doesn't look like it's going to get mended in 2024 and beyond. But that is going to wrap things up for today's show. We will be back with you guys on Wednesday. We're still trying to get some great interviews for the everydayers, as you guys know. But we will be handing the show off to you guys as well, doing some fan mail shows and also trying to get into some more good topics for you. But until then, to make sure you don't miss the show, go follow or subscribe for free to the Locked On Chargers YouTube channel, and also listen to the show wherever you get your podcast from. And hey, just because you watch the YouTube channel doesn't mean you can't go subscribe wherever you listen to your podcast from either, right? It all helps us and it keeps the lights on. So we appreciate the everydayers for supporting us on every platform, because that always helps. Everything always helps. But make sure you guys also follow all of our social media, because we also post the show every day to all of it as well. You can find me on Twitter at Dan Talk Sports, David Drogemeyer on Twitter at DroTalkSD, and the show's Twitter at Locked On LAC. You can also find us on Instagram at Locked On Chargers and our Locked On Chargers Facebook page. Like I said, we will be getting into some fan shows for you guys. Get your 30-second voicemails in at 323-524-7924, and we try to get most of those on the show, and we'll definitely be getting into some more voicemails this week. So make sure you guys get your voicemails in and get your questions in. But we will be back with you guys on Wednesday, and we will talk to you then. But until then, take it easy and go Bolts.